Welcome to your Imperial cabin. Tonight we journey into the shadows to uncover the tale of Darth Sidious. Settle in, relax, and let the dark history unfold. The sun rose softly over the rolling hills of Naboo, bathing its emerald landscapes in gentle golden hues. Amidst the delicate symphony of singing birds and whispering leaves stood the magnificent city of Theed, its grand architecture gleaming elegantly beneath the morning light. This was the world into which Sheev Palpatine was born, a place seemingly untouched by the galaxy's turmoil, where culture thrived and peace endured. In a stately mansion overlooking the crystalline waters of a tranquil lake, young Palpatine grew up surrounded by every luxury imaginable. Marble hallways echoed softly with laughter, murmurs of conversation drifting from rooms filled with poets, artists, and politicians. But even in childhood, Sheev felt strangely detached from the comfort around him. He watched with calculating eyes, always observing, always learning. While other children chased one another through flower-dotted meadows, Sheev chose to wander quietly among the nobles, absorbing their subtle interactions, their concealed ambitions. He learned early that a well-timed compliment could open doors, a gentle suggestion could shape opinions, and the right whispered secret could unravel even the most careful plans. Evenings found young Palpatine in expansive libraries, bathed in the glow of antique lamps. He devoured books on history, politics, and philosophy, not merely for knowledge, but for understanding power, how it was gained, wielded, and most importantly, how it was lost. His mind grew sharper with each turn of the page, his heart colder with each calculated insight. Yet beneath this polished exterior, this young noble prodigy praised by elders, a deeper hidden truth took root. Sheev Palpatine, the child who spoke eloquently at family gatherings and impressed Naboo's elite with his charm, quietly harbored an insatiable desire to rise beyond mere nobility, beyond the comfortable elegance of his surroundings, to grasp something far greater and infinitely darker. And so, amid Naboo's serene beauty and sophisticated grace, the first shadows began to gather, unnoticed, unassuming, yet destined to cast darkness over the entire galaxy. As Sheev Palpatine grew older, his curiosity deepened, growing darker with every passing year. The once quiet child who observed Naboo's aristocracy from afar had become a keen student of human nature, his sharp eyes always searching for the hidden truths behind polite smiles and diplomatic words. Yet his true fascination lay far beyond mere social manipulation. Palpatine's interests soon drifted into the shadows, towards the forbidden secrets whispered about only in obscure texts and murmured stories, tales of power that transcended mortal understanding, bound to the ancient order of the Sith. His exploration began innocently enough. Beneath Naboo's great libraries, concealed in forgotten chambers known only to a few, he discovered dusty volumes bound in cracked leather, manuscripts written in languages long dead. The whispers within those pages spoke of the Force, not as the Jedi taught, but as something primal and untamed, boundless in its power. Compelled by an insatiable hunger for knowledge, Palpatine embarked on journeys that took him far beyond Naboo. He wandered the bustling streets of Coruscant's lower levels, hidden within crowds as he acquired artifacts from black markets and shadowy dealers. Each item he collected, a dark crystal, a fragment of ancient armor, an amulet stained by the Force, seemed to whisper forgotten truths, each revealing a sliver of the dark side's infinite potential. He visited hidden shrines on remote planets, immersing himself in rituals that made even seasoned smugglers shudder. Each place he encountered seemed to imprint upon him, awakening powers that simmered just beneath the surface, slowly shaping him into something new, something profoundly dangerous. And as he stood in the cold darkness of those forbidden sanctuaries, Palpatine felt something stir deep within himself, a presence both intoxicating and terrifying, whispering promises of power greater than anything he had ever imagined. It was here, in these secret journeys and silent meditations, that Sheev Palpatine began to vanish, and something far more sinister began to rise in his place. In shadows, far from the eyes of Naboo's nobility, he now understood his true path. The darkness had claimed him, not by force, but by invitation, a willing embrace of secrets too tempting to resist. And with every discovery, every dark whisper heard, Palpatine knew there would be no turning back. Sheev Palpatine stood at the edge of a precipice he had long sought, the path of shadows stretching endlessly before him. He had traveled across the galaxy, gathering fragments of forbidden knowledge, yet still something remained incomplete, a missing key that would unlock the full magnitude of his power. Fate, or perhaps destiny guided by the dark side itself, soon provided that key. On a mist-shrouded night in the heart of a secluded sanctuary, deep beneath Coruscant's glittering towers, Palpatine found himself awaiting a mysterious audience. Rumors had whispered about this meeting for months, shrouded in secrecy and legend. The encounter with Darth Plagueis the Wise, a being spoken of only in hushed tones among those who dared to touch darkness. As the Sith Lord entered the chamber, the air seemed to freeze, carrying an oppressive weight Palpatine had never felt before. Plagueis, cloaked entirely in shadows, his presence a silent, overwhelming storm, studied Palpatine in a long, silent appraisal. The young noble felt the Sith Lord's scrutiny pierce through his very being, laying bare every secret ambition, every hidden hunger. "I have watched you closely." The Sith Master's voice resonated deeply, filled with both menace and promise. "You seek the power hidden from the Jedi, the strength that reshapes destiny itself." Palpatine felt his pulse quicken. It was as if Plagueis saw straight into his soul, understanding desires he had never voiced aloud. "Teach me," Palpatine breathed, the words emerging not as a plea but as a command edged with ambition. "I will master whatever you offer, no matter the cost." Plagueis stepped closer, his eyes gleaming like twin suns in the shadows. "Know this, Sheev Palpatine? To learn the ways of the Sith is to embrace sacrifice and betrayal. The dark side grants no mercy. It demands everything, your fear, your passion, your life itself. Are you prepared?" Palpatine met Plagueis' gaze unflinchingly, his resolve unyielding. "I am ready to become more than what I am, to transcend my limits entirely." The Sith Lord smiled faintly, recognizing the raw potential standing before him. "Then from this moment forward, Sheev Palpatine no longer exists. You shall henceforth be known as Darth Sidious. Together, we will reshape the galaxy." In that instant, Palpatine felt a surge of power, dark, intoxicating, and limitless. His transformation had begun. Under Plagueis' merciless tutelage, Sidious delved deeper into the forbidden teachings of the Sith. He mastered arts previously considered impossible, manipulating life, dominating minds, bending reality itself to his will. Days turned into months, and months into years, as Plagueis shaped his apprentice into a living weapon of darkness, a prodigy whose strength and cunning grew exponentially. Sidious absorbed every secret his master offered, all the while understanding the inevitable destiny awaiting both master and apprentice, a fate as dark as the power he now wielded. Within the shadows of Coruscant, hidden from Jedi eyes, a new chapter of darkness quietly unfolded, one that would soon plunge the galaxy itself into chaos. In the silent depths of Coruscant, beneath a sprawling city oblivious to the shadows festering below, Darth Sidious and his master Darth Plagueis had reached the zenith of their collaboration. Sidious had patiently endured years under the watchful, penetrating gaze of his master, absorbing every whispered secret, every forbidden ritual. Yet within the heart of every Sith apprentice lies the inevitable spark of betrayal, a burning ember destined to consume the master, fueling the apprentice's rise to supremacy. Plagueis had long become consumed with a singular obsession, the quest for immortality, the final conquest over death itself. He labored tirelessly, hidden within laboratories glowing dimly with eerie light, pushing the Force into realms forbidden even to Sith tradition. And Sidious, ever the vigilant student, watched with growing fascination, carefully masking his true intent behind a veil of unwavering loyalty. One night, as darkness blanketed the city above, and the lights of Coruscant's endless towers dimmed in slumber, Sidious sensed his time had finally arrived. He found his master deep in meditation, immersed in the Force, his consciousness stretched thin across the fabric of reality, vulnerable in his quest for infinite life. Sidious approached silently, his footsteps barely audible upon the cold stone floor. He stood behind Plagueis, sensing the currents of power swirling around them both, raw, intoxicating, and waiting to be claimed. In this fragile moment, Sidious knew he held destiny itself within his grasp. Plagueis' eyes suddenly flickered open, sensing the change. "Sidious," he whispered, suspicion mingling with uncertainty. "What are you doing?" Sidious smiled, a cold, ruthless smile that Plagueis had never seen before. "Completing your lessons, master," he replied calmly. "You taught me everything you knew, but you forgot your own teachings. To be Sith is to embrace betrayal, and now I embrace it fully." With a sudden surge of dark side energy, Sidious unleashed an overwhelming storm of Force lightning, enveloping Plagueis in a searing cascade of raw power. The chamber filled with brilliant arcs of electricity, illuminating every corner with harsh, unforgiving clarity. Plagueis, caught unprepared, screamed in agony, his attempts to resist futile against his apprentice's carefully honed strength. Yet even as Plagueis writhed under Sidious's relentless assault, he managed a final, bitter smile, recognizing in that moment the fulfillment of his own teachings. The apprentice had indeed surpassed the master. At last, Plagueis' body slumped to the floor, lifeless and defeated. The chamber fell silent, the echoes of his final cries fading into darkness. Sidious stood over the fallen Sith Lord, breathing deeply, his pulse quickened with triumph. Power surged within him, limitless and unchallenged. Darth Sidious had finally ascended. The apprentice had become the master. His journey was far from complete, but in that single, decisive act of betrayal, he had irrevocably sealed his destiny, forever binding himself to the darkness he now commanded. The galaxy itself awaited his next move, unknowingly poised on the brink of a storm it could never have imagined. The cavernous halls of Darth Sidious's hidden sanctum echoed with the sharp clash of metal, the rasp of labored breathing, and the heavy tread of relentless determination. In these shadowy chambers beneath Coruscant, lit by torches that flickered like ghostly whispers, a new weapon was forged, one of flesh, blood, and pure, simmering hatred. Sidious watched closely, concealed in shadows, his piercing eyes fixed upon the training grounds below. At the center of the brutal arena stood a figure, young, fierce, his crimson and black tattooed skin glistening with sweat. This was Darth Maul, a Zabrak child taken from Dathomir, ripped from his mother's arms by Sidious's dark hand, destined from birth to become an instrument of terror. From the first moment Sidious sensed Maul's raw potential, he had known the boy would be exceptional, an embodiment of rage and pain. But mere potential was never enough. For years, Maul had been subjected to a merciless regimen designed to strip away every weakness, every hesitation, leaving behind only a warrior whose entire purpose was absolute obedience and vengeance against the Jedi. Again, Sidious commanded softly, his voice deceptively calm, yet carrying an undertone of absolute authority. Maul did not hesitate, lunging at a cluster of combat droids, his dual-bladed lightsaber igniting with a savage hum. He moved with terrifying speed and precision, carving through metal and circuitry as easily as if slicing through air. The mechanical enemies fell around him, sparks cascading in bright arcs, reflecting briefly in his burning yellow eyes. Maul's existence was one of constant challenge. Sidious regularly placed him in seemingly impossible scenarios, pushing him relentlessly, watching him evolve with each trial. Each defeat he endured sharpened him, fueling his hatred, deepening his resolve. With each victory, he proved himself worthy of his master's ruthless standards. "Do you feel it, Maul?" Sidious asked, stepping closer, his voice a dark whisper cutting through the silence that now settled over the destroyed droids. "Do you feel the fury within you, the raw strength of your hate?" Maul kneeled, breathing heavily, eyes ablaze with intensity. "Yes, Master," he growled. "I live for nothing else." Sidious smiled faintly, satisfied by the fire in his apprentice's voice. "Good. Remember always that hate makes you powerful, fear makes you relentless, pain makes you unstoppable. You are the blade in the dark, the storm that will strike the Jedi from existence." Maul's eyes flashed, his muscles tensed, eager for the battles yet to come. "I will not fail you, my master." Sidious placed a hand gently upon Maul's shoulder, his touch as cold as it was commanding. "Indeed, you will not. The Jedi believe themselves safe, protected by their ideals and their noble intentions. But they are blind. They cannot see you coming." And Sidious withdrew his hand, retreating into the shadows from which he had emerged. "Prepare yourself, Maul. Your time approaches. Soon, you will become fear incarnate, a tool forged from vengeance, poised to plunge the galaxy into darkness." In Maul stood, his figure silhouetted against the flickering torches, anticipation crackling around him. Unseen by his apprentice, Sidious's eyes glinted with cunning. Maul was but the first pawn in a far greater game, yet his role was critical. Soon, the galaxy would witness the fury of the Sith reborn, a fury embodied by the fearsome warrior now ready to be unleashed. In the Senate Rotunda of Coruscant, where thousands of pods floated like celestial bodies in orbit around power, a soft-spoken senator from the peaceful world of Naboo took his seat, quiet, observant and invisible to the masses. Sheev Palpatine had returned to the public stage, his true identity of Darth Sidious buried beneath layers of charm, humility, and practiced smiles. The galaxy saw a diplomat. In truth, it was witnessing the rise of a tyrant cloaked in silk. Palpatine played the political game not like a senator, but like a puppeteer, each word chosen, each gesture rehearsed, each ally meticulously groomed. He spoke often of peace, of unity, of the noble ideals of the Republic. But in the quiet corners of backroom chambers, behind closed doors and encrypted transmissions, he whispered something else entirely: fear, urgency, and the necessity of control. The engine of chaos began with Naboo. Sidious, orchestrating both sides from the shadows, worked with surgical precision. Through his control of the Trade Federation's leaders, specifically the malleable and timid Viceroy Newt Gunray, he engineered the blockade of his own homeworld, a masterstroke. Publicly, Senator Palpatine appeared outraged, pleading with the Senate to act. Privately, he pulled the strings of the invaders, ensuring their escalation. When Queen Amidala arrived at the Senate to plead for assistance, the stage had already been set. Chancellor Valorum, honorable but paralyzed by procedure, fumbled under pressure. The Senate, bogged down by bureaucracy, could offer no meaningful response. Sidious watched it unfold with satisfaction, each piece moving exactly as planned. And then, like a calm tide washing over chaos, Palpatine offered a solution, softly, carefully. Perhaps, he suggested to Amidala with sincere concern in his eyes, a vote of no confidence in the Chancellor's leadership might force the Senate to act. He made no demands. He never had to. The Queen, young and desperate, took the bait. The ensuing vote sent shockwaves through the Senate. Chancellor Valorum was ousted. Palpatine, riding a wave of sympathy as the representative of the suffering world of Naboo, was nominated as a candidate for Chancellor. Behind the scenes, whispers encouraged the hesitant. Promises were made, secrets traded. When the final votes were tallied, Palpatine emerged victorious, his face a picture of humbled gratitude. He returned to Naboo alongside the Queen, cloaked in modesty and hope. To the galaxy, he was a beacon of democracy, a statesman chosen by his peers to lead them through difficult times. But in the quiet of his quarters, the smile he wore melted into something colder, darker. The first move had been made. The Republic, already bloated and fragile, had just accepted the rule of a Sith Lord with open arms. As Chancellor, Palpatine expanded his influence gradually, never too quickly, never too boldly. He established connections with key military minds, Tarkin, Krennic, Masameda, thus laying the foundation for future control. He spoke of outer rim tensions, of growing instability, planting seeds of fear that would one day justify the extraordinary powers he so carefully pursued. His most dangerous weapon was not the Force, nor his secret apprentice, it was patience. While others sought glory in battles or prestige in titles, Sidious sought silence, infiltration, and timing. He would not simply destroy the Republic, he would become it. And when the time was right, when the galaxy cried out for strength over liberty, for control over chaos, he would answer, not as a tyrant, but as the solution they themselves had begged for. All he needed now was war. War was never a byproduct of Sidious's ambitions. It was the blueprint. For years, he had stirred discontent across the galaxy like a composer arranging a dark symphony, drawing tension from every corner of the Republic. In the Outer Rim, trade disputes grew fiercer. Separatist whispers echoed louder. Fear spread like a silent contagion, and in every echo of conflict, Chancellor Palpatine's influence deepened. It began with the Confederacy of Independent Systems. Publicly, the CIS appeared to be a coalition of systems seeking freedom from corruption, led by the charismatic Count Dooku, a former Jedi Master disillusioned with the Order's complacency. In truth, Dooku was no rebel visionary. He was Darth Tyrannus, the newest apprentice of Darth Sidious, and the centerpiece in a grand deception. Together, they crafted an illusion of division. The Republic and the Separatists, two sides of the same coin, both dancing to the same hidden tune. Sidious gave Dooku his role, and Dooku, in turn, ensured systems fell in line, appealing to their frustrations and their greed. Massive armies were built, droids by the billions, assembled on Geonosis under secret Sith supervision. Meanwhile, within the Republic, a shadowy figure known only as Sifo Dyas had long ago commissioned a clone army, claiming he foresaw war. After his mysterious death, engineered by Dooku, Sidious seized the project, modifying the clones with a secret failsafe, Order 66. Each soldier would carry this command embedded in his mind, awaiting activation. The chessboard was now fully set. When Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi discovered the clone army on Kamino, the Jedi Council was wary but desperate. With war brewing and their order stretched thin, they accepted the clones as necessary allies. Sidious watched as the Jedi unknowingly armed themselves with their future executioners. The war officially began on Geonosis, when Jedi and clone troopers clashed with separatist droids in a violent, chaotic confrontation. The Senate, gripped by fear, granted Palpatine emergency powers to deal with the crisis. His tone was calm, regretful. He did not ask for this war, he insisted. He only wished to preserve peace. Behind the soft-spoken reassurances, Sidious exhaled with satisfaction. The Clone Wars had begun, not as an accident of diplomacy, but as a manufactured storm with one architect, one mastermind. The galaxy became a battlefield. Worlds burned, alliances fractured, Republic forces surged forward, led by Jedi generals who found themselves increasingly transformed from guardians of peace into weary warriors of war. The Separatists responded with equal ferocity, their droid legions spilling across the stars. Yet no matter how high the cost, neither side ever truly gained the upper hand, because the war was never meant to end quickly. Every battle, every casualty, every planet lost or liberated, it all served a singular purpose: to exhaust the galaxy, to divide and distract, to erode the very foundations of the Republic. And through it all, Palpatine remained a beacon of order amid chaos, slowly amassing power with each new emergency decree. The Senate, once the heartbeat of democracy, began to defer more and more authority to him. Just until the war ends, they told themselves. But for Sidious, the war would only end when every piece had fallen into place, and it was nearly time for his most dangerous piece of all to make his move. The Jedi's chosen one, the boy from Tatooine, was growing stronger, and Sidious watched him like a hunter studies his prey, knowing the perfect moment to strike was drawing near. The Clone Wars had given him chaos. Now, he would harvest it for absolute control. In the galaxy's cries for peace, Sidious heard only opportunity. Soon, there would be no Republic, no Jedi, no war, only an empire, and only him. The Jedi believed Anakin Skywalker was their chosen one, a prophesied savior destined to bring balance to the Force. But to Darth Sidious, he was something far more valuable, the final key in his grand design, the perfect vessel for darkness. From the day they met, Sidious had kept a close eye on the boy. He watched him grow from a wide-eyed Padawan into a war hero, respected by his peers, feared by his enemies, and admired by the galaxy. But beneath the accolades and battlefield victories, Sidious saw what the Jedi refused to acknowledge. Anakin was unstable, passionate, frustrated. He burned too brightly for the rigid doctrine of the Jedi Order, and Sidious would be the one to fan those flames into an inferno. It began subtly, encouragement cloaked as mentorship. As Chancellor, Palpatine offered Anakin private counsel, speaking not as a politician, but as a friend. He praised the young Jedi's strength, his bravery, and his instincts. "You are stronger than any Jedi I have ever known," he'd say with a soft smile. "The Council does not understand your gifts." Anakin, weighed down by war and the Jedi's cold detachment, began to listen. Sidious fed his doubts like a slow drip of poison. He questioned the Council's choices, their hypocrisy, their fear of Anakin's power. And when Anakin was denied the rank of Master, despite his seat on the Council, Sidious struck a deeper blow. How can they place you on the Council and not grant you the title? It is an insult. But it was fear, not pride, that truly cracked the foundation. Anakin had visions, horrible, vivid dreams of Padme, his wife in secret, dying in childbirth. The same torment he once felt when he failed to save his mother now returned, and with it, a desperation that the Jedi could neither soothe nor comprehend. Sidious offered the one thing Anakin could not find anywhere else: hope. "Have you ever heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?" Palpatine asked, his voice low and inviting. The tale he told was not just a myth, but bait. A story of a Sith so powerful he could prevent death itself. And as he spoke, he watched Anakin's eyes narrow with hungry fascination. To the Jedi, such knowledge was heresy, but to Anakin, who would sacrifice anything to save Padme, it was a lifeline. The final act of seduction came when the Jedi, suspicious of the Chancellor's growing powers, tasked Anakin to spy on him. It was the breaking point. Sidious had orchestrated the moment perfectly. He revealed his true identity, not with fear, but with calm confidence. "I am the only one who can help you save her." Anakin's world twisted violently, his loyalty torn between the Order that distrusted him and the mentor who claimed to hold the secret to defeating death. He went to Mace Windu, yes, but even as Windu confronted Sidious in that fateful office, lightsaber drawn, Anakin wrestled with the future. In his eyes, the Jedi had already condemned Padme, and when Windu raised his blade to strike, Anakin chose not the light, but love twisted by fear. With a single strike, he severed Windu's hand and sealed his fate. Sidious, now free, unleashed a blast of lightning that sent the Jedi Master flying into the void. The room fell into silence, and Anakin collapsed to his knees. "What have I done?" he whispered. Sidious approached, eyes blazing, voice filled with triumph. "You are fulfilling your destiny, Anakin. Become my apprentice. Learn to use the dark side of the Force." Anakin hesitated for only a moment longer. Then he bowed his head. "I will do whatever you ask. Just help me save her." And so, in a moment born of fear, love, and shattered ideals, the Jedi's chosen one was no more. Darth Vader was born, not with a scream, but with a whisper, a solemn vow in the dark. The Republic would fall, the Jedi would burn, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The night was eerily quiet above Coruscant, the stars veiled by clouds of smoke and sorrow. Across the galaxy, Jedi temples burned, lightsabers lay extinguished beside the fallen, and the Force itself trembled in silence. What began as a war for peace had become a massacre under the guise of security, and at the center of it all stood Chancellor Palpatine, the architect of a tragedy cloaked in triumph. Order 66 had been executed with chilling precision. The clone troopers, once allies and friends of the Jedi, turned against them without hesitation. Years of camaraderie were undone in seconds by a hidden command buried deep in their minds. They followed orders, not with malice, but with unwavering obedience. For them, it was not betrayal, it was protocol. Jedi across every corner of the galaxy fell in moments, shot in the back, caught mid-meditation, overwhelmed by numbers. The once proud order was reduced to scattered whispers and burning ruins, and in the Senate chamber, Palpatine's voice rose above the thunderous applause of frightened senators. He stood before them, cloaked in shadows, his face scarred from his duel with the treasonous Jedi Masters. His body trembled with practiced weariness. "The Jedi," he proclaimed, "have betrayed the Republic. They attempted to assassinate me, to take control of the government." Gasps echoed across the chamber. Senators clung to every word, desperate for a resolution, for meaning amid the chaos. In order to ensure the security and continued stability, he continued, the Republic will be reorganized into the first Galactic Empire. A moment of stunned silence, then thunderous applause. Not all cheered, of course. A few looked on with dawning dread. Padme Amidala, seated high in her senatorial pod, watched with eyes wide and heart heavy. "So this is how liberty dies," she whispered, with thunderous applause. In that single moment, the age of the Republic died, not by force, but by consent. Palpatine's transformation was complete, no longer just a chancellor or a Sith Lord hidden behind layers of deception. He was now Emperor, absolute, unchallenged. He moved swiftly, consolidating power, appointing governors to replace planetary senators, expanding the Imperial military, and silencing dissent under the banner of order and safety. His new apprentice, Darth Vader, clad in dark robes and wielding a crimson blade, became his enforcer, swift, merciless, and feared. Together, they hunted the last survivors of the Jedi. Temples were desecrated, holocrons destroyed, and knowledge erased. History was rewritten, casting the Jedi as traitors and terrorists, while Sidious painted himself as the savior who brought peace. Across the stars, people adjusted. They accepted the Empire's firm grip, some gratefully, others quietly. After years of war, fear had become familiar, and in fear, Palpatine thrived. The people did not need freedom. They needed stability, and he would provide it, at any cost. From the throne room of the newly built Imperial Palace, Sidious gazed out over Coruscant. The city's endless lights shimmered like embers from a dying fire. Behind him, Vader knelt in silence, his transformation nearly complete. "The galaxy belongs to us now," Sidious murmured, his voice a cold promise to the stars. "And soon, not even death will deny me." The Sith had ruled before, in secret. Now they ruled openly. The dark side had triumphed, and the age of the Empire had begun. The galaxy had fallen into line. Star systems bowed beneath the iron grip of the Empire. Fear patrolled the hyperlanes, and the Jedi were all but extinct. Yet for all the power Emperor Palpatine had amassed, a single, insatiable hunger still gnawed at the core of his soul: death. Darth Sidious, master of the Sith, supreme ruler of the Galactic Empire, feared only one thing: the end. The thought of his own mortality, of his power slipping into the void, was unbearable. He had not clawed his way from the shadows of Naboo to be undone by the frailty of flesh. His former master, Darth Plagueis, had promised the power to cheat death, but failed to achieve it. Sidious would not fail. Deep within the unknown regions, in a place lost to most navicomputers, he discovered Exegol, a storm-racked world steeped in ancient Sith energy. Hidden beneath its lightning-choked skies, Sidious constructed secret laboratories and temples, built with the bones of forgotten civilizations. It was here, away from the eyes of the galaxy and even his closest advisors, that his true work began. The pursuit of immortality demanded more than dark rituals. It required science, alchemy, sacrifice. With the help of Sith cultists and rogue scientists, Sidious experimented with cloning, gene splicing, and dark side transference. Countless bodies were grown and discarded, each a failure, each unable to sustain the sheer magnitude of his power. Some melted, others decayed, all were flawed. But Sidious pressed on. In hidden vaults, he stored fragments of his own essence, splinters of his consciousness meant to survive death and anchor him to the physical realm. He studied holocrons older than the Republic itself, consulted forbidden tomes recovered from Sith tombs, and delved deeper into secrets even Plagueis had feared. Meanwhile, he laid contingency plans throughout the galaxy: secret observatories, loyal remnants, and mysterious agents who would act in his name if he ever fell. The Sith Eternal, a shadowy cult sworn to his will, prepared to resurrect their dark god in the event of his demise. Even the construction of the Death Star served a deeper purpose than domination. It was a symbol of absolute control, but also a test, the ultimate demonstration of power over life and death. If entire worlds could be snuffed out with the push of a button, why should a Sith Lord ever die? But despite all his efforts, Sidious remained trapped in a mortal body. Time crept forward. His bones ached. His skin withered. Though he kept up the appearance of strength in public, behind closed doors he grew more reliant on the dark side to sustain him. The Emperor's voice grew raspier, his temper shorter. Even Vader noticed. "Is something wrong, my master?" he asked once, his mask concealing any emotion. Sidious only smiled. "Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen." Yet in truth, he knew time was his enemy, and so he intensified his experiments. One body must succeed, one vessel must survive. He would not allow death to claim him, not now, not ever. And then, one day, he saw it. In a vision wreathed in smoke and lightning, the future unfolded before him: the fall of the Empire, the betrayal of Vader, the rise of a girl, one connected to him by blood. But he did not fear. He would plan. He would adapt. For if death ever came for him, it would find only an empty shell. Palpatine would live again. Not even the Force would deny him what he was owed: eternity. The Death Star's throne room was silent, save for the hum of its great engines and the crackle of tension in the air. Outside, a great battle raged in the stars, rebel starfighters darting like fireflies against the massive frame of the Empire's ultimate weapon. Inside, however, Emperor Palpatine sat calmly upon his throne, cloaked in black, his yellow eyes gleaming with sinister amusement. Before him knelt his greatest creation and his greatest failure. Darth Vader stood at his side, the mechanical wheeze of his breathing steady and cold. And before them, shackled and defiant, stood Luke Skywalker, the boy who had pierced the darkness, the spark that dared to challenge the firestorm. Sidious could feel the struggle within the young Jedi. Conflict, fear, anger. It all swirled around Luke like a storm begging for a lightning strike. And Palpatine was the storm's master. "Strike me down," he whispered, his voice silky and venomous, "and your journey to the dark side will be complete." Luke trembled. He looked to Vader, his father, and then back to the Emperor, who watched him like a spider poised to strike. For years, Palpatine had believed his triumph inevitable. The Jedi were extinct. The Sith reigned. Vader was loyal. And now the son of Skywalker would be bent to his will, molded into a new apprentice, a younger, unbroken heir. The final piece of the puzzle, but something unexpected happened. Luke refused. He cast aside his lightsaber. "I am a Jedi, like my father before me." Sidious's grin vanished. So be it. He rose from his throne, extending his hands. Lightning arced from his fingers, pure hatred made manifest. The room filled with blue energy as Luke screamed, writhing beneath the relentless barrage. Palpatine laughed, savoring the agony. This was not just punishment. It was a lesson. "Now you will die," he hissed. And then something broke. Vader stood motionless, torn between master and son. His helmet turned from Luke's convulsing body to the shriveled figure spewing hate. Memories flickered, a child on Tatooine, a mother's screams, Padme's death, the temple in flames, the lies, the chains, and then silence. In a sudden burst of motion, Vader grabbed the Emperor, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. Palpatine's lightning arced wildly, illuminating Vader's armor in crackling blue light. "No!" Sidious shrieked, fury and fear blending into a final, desperate wail. Vader hurled him into the reactor shaft, and the darkness screamed. The Sith Lord's body twisted in a cascade of energy, devoured by the abyss below. And in that moment, decades in the making, the galaxy took a breath. Balance had returned, but the victory came at a cost. Vader collapsed, dying, redeemed not by war or power, but by love, by the simple act of choosing compassion over control. Luke held him in his final moments, the son cradling the father, and in that final breath, Anakin Skywalker returned. For the galaxy, it was the end of tyranny. For Sidious, it was not the end. He had prepared for this, always. But for now, his voice was gone, his presence extinguished, and the Empire, built on 1,000 lies, began to crumble beneath the weight of a single truth. The light could never be extinguished, not forever. The galaxy celebrated. The Death Star had been destroyed. Darth Vader was dead. The Emperor had fallen. Across countless worlds, people danced in the streets, tore down Imperial banners, and dared to hope that peace might finally return. But beneath the shifting sands of Exegol, a world unmarked on most star charts, shrouded by eternal storms and cloaked in the dark side, Darth Sidious did not rest. He lived. Or rather, he persisted. When Vader had hurled him into the reactor core, Palpatine's body had been destroyed. But his spirit, tethered to ancient Sith rituals and twisted Force alchemy, had not been so easily undone. The moment of his death had been prepared for. His consciousness was flung across the stars, screaming through the Force until it found a vessel, crude, incomplete, but enough to contain him. A clone, one of many. Deep within Exegol's hidden laboratories, Sith cultists had been preparing for decades. The Sith Eternal, zealots loyal only to Sidious, had followed his commands with religious fervor. They grew bodies, bred monstrosities, constructed fleets in silence. They worshipped a god who had died and yet was reborn. But the new body could not hold him. Sidious awoke to agony. The clone vessel twisted under the weight of his power, its flesh unstable, decaying with every breath. He moved with difficulty, his fingers gnarled, his voice reduced to a guttural rasp. Yet his mind, sharp as ever, remained intact. He ruled from a massive obsidian throne, surrounded by vats of failed bodies, each a silent testament to his refusal to die. He poured what power he could into dark experiments, seeking the perfect vessel, not merely a body to inhabit, but a legacy to endure. And so he created Snoke. Not a true Sith, not even truly alive. Snoke was a puppet, grown in a lab, imbued with Sidious's influence. Through Snoke, he manipulated the remnants of the Empire, forging them into a new threat, the First Order, a hidden empire born from the ashes of the Old One. From the shadows, Palpatine's voice echoed through Supreme Leader Snoke. Through whispers and guidance, he corrupted Ben Solo, heir to the Skywalker bloodline. Another pawn, another weapon. But this time, Sidious would not act openly. He had learned. He let the First Order rise on its own. Let the Resistance form in response. Let the galaxy spiral once again into conflict. His enemies saw fractured factions, leaderless remnants. But they did not see the hidden throne, the secret fleet being constructed in the frozen catacombs of Exegol, the Final Order. Thousands of star destroyers, each with the power to annihilate worlds, enough to conquer the galaxy in a single stroke. Sidious waited, yes, watched, plotted. His body was weak, yes, but his mind, as his spirit, and his influence, stronger than ever. He no longer needed the Senate, no longer needed politics, or masks, or the illusion of democracy. The next time he rose, he would do so not as Chancellor, not even as Emperor, but as the Dark Lord reborn, the embodiment of the Sith, eternal, inevitable, and unstoppable. And as he gazed into the swirling vortex of hyperspace above Exegol, he whispered to the void, "This time, no one will stand in my way." The darkness stirred. Sidious, now more phantom than man, sat upon his throne on Exegol, his ravaged clone body kept alive through twisted Sith alchemy and machines that groaned with each unnatural breath. Above him, lightning split the sky of this forgotten world, casting jagged shadows across legions of Sith cultists kneeling in reverence. The time had come. His final order, an armada of planet-killing star destroyers, was ready. Each vessel bore the power of the old Death Stars, each one a sword raised against a galaxy that had defied him too many times. The veil of secrecy lifted. The Sith Eternal transmitted their threat across all systems, bow or burn. But in the vastness of the Force, a ripple pushed back. Rey. She was young, unrefined, still searching for her place in a story she hadn't asked to inherit. But Sidious had seen her through the Force long before she reached Exegol. She was more than just a Jedi. She was blood, his granddaughter. Through her he saw opportunity. Her strength was raw, filled with anger, longing, and love. These were not Jedi traits. They were Sith, waiting to be claimed. If she struck him down as he taunted her to do, his spirit would pass into her. He would live again, reborn in youthful flesh, stronger than ever, ruling the galaxy not as a dying emperor, but as an eternal god. And she was tempted. Sidious watched her tremble, lightsaber in hand, the ghost of every Jedi whispering in her mind. She stood alone, until she didn't. In the skies above, the Resistance arrived, not a fleet, but a rebellion reborn. Starships poured from hyperspace like a tidal wave. What was once hopeless now became defiance. But Sidious laughed. He raised his arms, and the heavens themselves answered. Lightning surged into the clouds and arced down into the Resistance fleet, disabling ships, crushing hope. His voice boomed through the storm. I am all the Sith. Yet even in that moment of supreme power, the Force answered. Rey stood. Her fear was gone. She remembered the teachings, the compassion, the sacrifice, the legacy not of blood, but of spirit. And with her rose every Jedi who had come before, not in flesh but in light. I am all the Jedi, she whispered. Sidious unleashed his fury, a cascade of lightning that lit the throne room in blinding white. Rey raised her saber, Anakin's saber, and held firm. The lightning deflected, turned, consumed its master. The Dark Lord screamed. His own power, amplified by rage and centuries of corruption, turned inward. His body cracked, vaporized, ripped apart by the force he thought he had mastered. And at last, silence fell. The throne disintegrated. The temple collapsed. The Sith, ancient and eternal, were no more. Rey fell to the floor, lifeless, until Ben Solo, redeemed by sacrifice, gave his life to save hers. Light, once lost, restored, the galaxy exhaled. Sidious was gone, truly gone. No vessel, no spirit, no contingency. The darkness he had nurtured for generations collapsed under the weight of a single truth. Tyranny cannot outlast hope. And in the echoes of that final confrontation, the galaxy was born anew. The galaxy moved on. Worlds began to heal. The banners of the Empire, once emblazoned across 1,000 systems, were torn down, replaced by symbols of unity and peace. The Sith were no more. The name Palpatine became a shadow, a ghost spoken of in holodocumentaries and old war records. But for those who had truly known the reach of his darkness, the end of Darth Sidious was more than a moment of triumph. It was a warning. Even in death, his legacy lingered. Entire star systems bore the scars of his reign, cities reduced to ash by the Empire's wrath, families shattered by war, cultures silenced under fear. Children grew up not knowing freedom, only the rigid order of the Emperor's will. He had shaped a generation with silence and subjugation. That was his power, not merely destruction, but erasure. And yet within the quiet after his fall, something strange happened. People remembered, stories passed from one campfire to the next, from veterans of the rebellion to their grandchildren. They told of the Sith Lord who wore the mask of a savior, of the Republic that trusted a serpent in golden robes, of how easily democracy had become dictatorship, not through war alone, but through manipulation, fear, and the promise of security. They spoke of Anakin Skywalker, the fallen Jedi redeemed by love, of Luke, the farm boy who brought light to the darkest of places, of Leia, the warrior diplomat, and Rey, the last spark of the Jedi legacy. But Darth Sidious, he remained the thread of every cautionary tale, not as a monster from legend, but as a reminder that evil does not always wear a snarl. Sometimes it smiles. Sometimes it offers help. Sometimes it whispers in your moment of doubt. Across the stars, the Force stirred, neither in balance nor in chaos, but in motion. Temples were rebuilt. New Jedi would rise. The Sith, extinguished for now, had left behind no lineage, no teachings, only ruins, only warnings. But as every historian knows, ruin is a beginning as much as it is an end. Somewhere, in forgotten places, Sith holocrons still pulsed faintly with red light, buried under ice, sunken in oceans, dormant, but not destroyed. And so the question echoed in the hearts of many. Would darkness rise again? Perhaps. But if it did, the galaxy would remember. It would remember Sidious, not as an invincible god, but as a man. A boy from Naboo who surrendered his soul for power. A master manipulator consumed by obsession. A tyrant who mistook fear for loyalty and control for destiny. He had ruled for decades. And yet in the end, he died as he lived, alone, clinging to a dream that no longer wanted him. In the stillness of the stars, his name faded, no longer chanted, no longer feared, just a whisper now, a warning carved into the Force itself. Beware the man who would trade freedom for order.